It is estimated that by the mid-2030s, at least 30% of all jobs will be replaced by AI. Now that's scary, really scary. Of course, if you're 60 years old, you really don't care because most probably by then you'll be retired. But if you're young, vibrant, and still working, it's something quite scary for you because you're thinking to yourself, will I even have a job? Will I even be able to work to sustain my family or my own life in the next 10 years? But let's forget about jobs. There are some skills that will be very difficult for AI to replicate or take over from in the near future at least. That's if it ever does so at all. And these are precious, important skills that I do believe anyone should be able to master and make sure that they position themselves in such a way that it's very difficult to get rid of them. If you do develop and master these skills, you make yourself indispensable. What are these skills? Let's go through them in this video. Now, these skills are divided into soft skills and hard skills. We'll start with the soft skills. First of all, what are soft skills? Soft skills are character traits and interpersonal skills that ideally characterize relationships. They help us get on together with other team members and other people, and they're not specific to any job. Ideally, these are traits that are very good for any person to be part of a team member and for someone to excel at the job or at the work that they are doing, as long as they are doing it with others. These are the skills that are very important for someone to come out at the top. The first skill is communication skills. Now, in this post-COVID era of working where people work from home, there's hybrid working. Some people entirely, in fact, work from home. Some people work from home and in the office. There's a lot of AI involved at work. There can be a huge barrier of communication because a lot of people will ideally not even interact with their bosses physically for a really long time. Some people will just work on computers and send over work and things like that. Because of that, it creates a huge barrier or a huge gap in communication. And for you to actually excel and prosper and become better than everyone else, then you need to make sure that you have awesome, perfect communication skills. You see, when it comes to communication, it's not only your ability to pass over information that matters, but also the ability of the person you're communicating with to receive the information. Their intellectual ability, their perception of things, the way they consider things is very important. That will determine whether the information is passed across very well or it's not passed across very well. There are a few things that are required. Things like empathy, things like active listening. These are very important for you to be able to pass across information very well. I'll give you an example. You could be dealing with two different people who have completely different personalities. Now, communicating is not only the act of you sitting down and passing across the information, but also listening to understand who exactly is the person you're talking to, how do they perceive things, how quickly do they perceive things, in what direction do they understand things. That's very important to help you understand how to deal with them. If the person naturally, for example, is an antagonistic kind of person, everything you speak, they will give you some form of antagonistic response. Having an antagonistic response doesn't ideally mean that the person doesn't want to take across the information, but they're the kind of person who will question everything you're saying because they want to be certain that that's exactly what is required in that situation, and it's not just things that they're going to take on face value. There are other people who will take the information, tell them everything, and they listen, keep quiet, and probably go and think about it later. Other people will reply you in the moment. Now, it's very important that you understand how to deal with these two different people. The way you would communicate with someone who is a bit antagonistic in their form of listening is very different from the way you would communicate with someone else who just takes across all the information. And you need to make sure that both of them actually take the information and they act on it to ensure that you get the results that you do require, for example, in your business or in your work offline. But how you pass across that information will vary. So you need to have, for example, active forms of listening. If you don't listen actively and understand how they think, then you won't pass across the information correctly because you probably assume that everyone takes information the same way, but then one person will not take the information the correct way. So if you're a very good communicator, because teams have all kinds of people, everyone needs to be on the same level. Everyone needs to be on the same frequency. You need to make sure that you're moving as a team to ensure that you have great results in a team. So for you as a team leader, for example, to have great communication skills will ensure that everyone is moving at the same level. It will also ensure that the team is well motivated, they have great morale inside the team, and also it will increase on the conflict and problem resolution within the team. If you're not a good communicator, they'll always and consistently be problems and difficulties and arguments within the team. But if you're a great communicator, it will be quite easy for you to understand that everyone understands things differently and you deal with them on different levels. That way you get the very best out of the team. Also, being a great communicator ensures that you can negotiate for a higher pay. Of course, who doesn't want a higher pay in this day and age? Everyone will, even in the past. Everyone wants a higher pay for their job. And for you to be able to convince your boss or your HR, whoever is responsible for increasing your pay, that you deserve a higher pay, you need to make sure that you're great at communicating. You need to make sure that they perceive your value at the workplace. You need to make sure that they understand why you want an increased pay. And simply having great communication skills will go a great way in ensuring this. The second skill is problem solving. Now this is also a very, very important skill, because I do believe it's probably one of the most important skills, if not the most important skill that anyone can have in this current world. It's most likely the skill that will get you the most money in the world, because people pay in order to solve their problems. If people don't have problems, usually they don't seek solutions. It's solutions that people pay for. So with time, AI will probably develop to be able to manage particular component of problem solving. There are some AI tools even currently that are used in problem solving, but they can't solve a problem wholly. And why is that? It's because problem solving in a huge aspect actually requires a lot of logical thinking, which unfortunately AI doesn't do. AI usually takes information and repeated use for it to figure out particular things. But some things don't even come from repeated use. It requires a lot of critical thinking, a lot of logical thinking. Take a problem, for example, like a couple that wants to divorce, a couple that, for example, goes to a counselor because they've been having a lot of issues in their marriage and they do want to divorce. That's usually the job of a counselor. Now imagine how AI would handle such a problem. If they wanted to divorce and the solution was AI, it would be a very difficult problem for it to solve, because problems that lead to divorce, for example, are not just one perspective, are not just one person. One person will have their own perspective of what the problem in their marriage is. Another person will also have their own perspective, and you'll notice it's not only one problem that they have been having. It's probably a problem that arose, 5 years ago, and it just kept creeping in slowly by slowly, and there are a lot of different perspectives. By the time someone reaches the point of wanting to divorce, they have probably gotten about 50 different problems in their marriage, and just solving a small tiny bit or aspect of it is what will solve each and everything, all the problems that they have been having in their marriage. So this could be quite difficult to just sort out simply using AI or information, because it's not just a single problem but a complex mixture of things, a lot of them actually being emotional. You see, when people do come to divorce, a lot of the issues are actually not even actual problems but simply emotions, the way someone perceives someone, the way someone has been thinking about someone else, and those are very difficult for AI to do. Another problem you can imagine is, for example, a community that does have social problems. In the community there's a lot of violence, there's probably a lot of gangs, there's a lot of rape, there's a lot of disrespect for people in a community, and maybe you imagine that the founding principle of everything is drugs. Now fixing that form of society would probably need a social worker. So the job here is being a social worker. Now how can AI replace social work? Again, think about the problem in the community. You want to solve this community's problems and ensure that the community gets back to a functioning, logical, good level, an acceptable level. Now it would be difficult for AI to manage this because it's a complex mixture of so many things that leads to this. People not having high self-esteem, people being raised poorly or differently by different parents, which parents, some of them are probably addicted to drugs. Some parents are so religious that, they won't let their children move out or learn anything to do with the world. And so then they just become vulnerable and easy to be attacked. I mean, it's a complicated aspect. And so it would be very difficult for AI to solve such a problem. It's not like, a single problem where someone is probably having issues with a particular amount of data in their workplace and they only need to put in that data and a graph will show up and it will be easy to interpret. No, it's a mixture of so many things that would be quite difficult for AI to figure out. And the next one is risk-taking skills. Now, some of the things involved in being a great risk taker, or what we would call risk-taking skills, are things like ability to take decisions quickly and easily, being courageous, tolerating loss, being creative and innovative, having heightened expectations, being comfortable in the face of uncertainty. Now, all these are great skills, but the whole idea or the whole reason someone would take these skills is because there's a potential for great gain. Now, for you to be able to have risk-taking skills, you need to be able to weigh, the different sides and think about the risk, be able to project like we've already talked about, and consider the fact that you might be able to make a lot of money, but you might also be able to lose a lot of money. Maybe it's not about money. Whatever it is, there is a potential for great loss and also a potential for gain. Unfortunately, AI cannot do this because, again, it doesn't have emotion. For example, tolerating loss is an emotional aspect. Being able to be courageous, for example, is an emotional aspect. You can't measure being courageous using AI. It simply takes decisions and there's nothing to do with feelings inside there. So this is something that only humans unfortunately can do. For example, starting a business, a particular line of business. Why would you choose to start that kind of business? Some people will choose to start that kind of business, others will not, because of their emotional strength and ability. And it's all about the risk taking. So AI might be able to start businesses, but understanding which one is better, which one is more complicated, which one will give you better rewards will be difficult for it. It could certainly give you the one that would make you the most money, but it will not be great at taking decisions on which one is riskier but has high reward. Very difficult for that. Now, the other side of the coin is the hard skills. Now, what are hard skills? These are abilities, capabilities, and skill sets that an individual can possess and perform in a measurable way. You can measure them. That's what hard skills are. What's the first hard skill that will be hard to replicate? Data analysis. Now, of course, AI can be able to collect and tabulate data, but it would be very difficult for it to analyze it and provide insights on the data. Very difficult. Why? Because, again, this requires a lot of logical thinking and sometimes even emotional thinking, emotional imagination. Feel like you're a human. An example would probably be utilizing data analysis to provide clients with better products. For example, let's imagine using data analysis, for example, to design a better car or a better performing car. It was, for example, noted that women who do have families prefer vans to luxury sedans or to pickup trucks. Now, that might not make a lot of sense, but think about it more emotionally and on a more parent-like basis. You can understand that a woman who owns a van will perceive herself as being more family oriented, and women would love, for example, to be family oriented. She will be perceived, or she'll imagine that she's perceived as someone who takes care more of her family than someone who owns, for example, a pickup truck, because they're only thinking about themselves and thinking about the pride of owning a car. Now, that would be quite difficult for a machine to imagine or think about, because ideally it's simply an insight, it's simply an insight, and it's very difficult to analyze. Now, if I'm a company that makes cars, then I'll make sure that I design my vans in such a way that they are more pleasing to women than to men, for example, and then I'll design the pickup trucks to make sure that they are more pleasing to men than women. Now, that would be very difficult for AI to do. Another one could be probably shopping on the internet. Very, very difficult for AI, for example, to make adjustments or understand why human beings would click on a particular button instead of another, depending on where it's positioned. It will certainly tell you that if a button is placed in this corner, it's clicked on more than the other one. But then, why is it being done? And how is that information helpful? And how can it be utilized to bring up more purchases? That is something that would be very difficult for AI. The second one is personal branding. Now, of course, people who lived very many years ago have no idea what personal branding is. But personal branding is something that has popped up, recently over the past few decades, and it is something that AI cannot replicate. Why? Because it is based upon using someone's personality and someone's traits and someone's ability to create a brand, to brand themselves. You don't use something from the outside to brand you, but you use your personality, typically your personality, to brand yourself. Now, when you do brand yourself, you can then get great deals and get a lot of people wishing to give you money, people wishing to utilize you to market probably particular products for them. Why? Because you do have a personal brand. This is something very complicated that simply just requires someone's personality, what someone exudes, what someone wants to be perceived perceived of them. You know, they are simply creating a perception of themselves onto the outside world. This is difficult because AI can take on the form of a personality that it is taught or that you want to pass across, but it cannot build its own personality. Yeah, it would be difficult. It can't be its own form of person. It can't be unique to itself. So that's the difference, and that's why it would be difficult for AI to take over. And so if you want to not be replaceable, this is something that you can do. For example, imagine YouTubers, social media stars, all these people in the media, people in Hollywood, they have particular personal branding that AI cannot replicate and cannot do for them. And the third one is programming. Now, programming in what perspective? Well, the whole idea of programming is building software solutions to problems that are present in our day-to-day running. Programming has been very, very helpful. People utilize it to build software that can be used on computers, that can be used on phones, things like websites. For example, when you go to do shopping, for example, on Amazon, it's because of programming that you're able to simply click a button, purchase something, and have it delivered at your home. Now, unfortunately, AI, again, at least for the moment, will not be able to do that, at least in the next few years. Why? Because, again, it requires a lot of intellectual thinking, a lot of logical thinking. You have to think and imagine like a human being and actually literally be a human being for you to do that. Yeah. So if you want to buy a shoe, for example, you go online and do that. The development of the software ability to solve the problem of someone wanting to buy a shoe and just having it delivered at their home can only be done by human beings and not AI. So if you can specialize in these industries, then you're very likely going to be setting up yourself for success. Now, if you want to be a success in your life, there is one trait, one very important trait that if you take a grasp of, you can never ever fail at anything in your life. This has completely changed my life, and I believe it can change your life. I'll leave a link to that video right here. Check it out. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, smash the notification bell. That way you never miss out on an upload. Catch you very soon with another video. Lots of love. Bye-bye.